Hello, everyone. So I'm Samuel. I work for Knowledge Integration. I'm the head of Arches at Kayent. We're a Arches service provider. Have been so since 2017. So yeah, we've nearly been involved in Arches for 10 years. And we're based in Sheffield in the UK. And I'm going to talk to you about the Arches QGIS plugin, which we're very happy that released in January now. So it's March now, so it's scary how time is going on. But yeah, so we're really happy about the QGIS plugin and where it is finally to have it out there. I've spoken about the QGIS plugin at a few developer conferences, and I think maybe this UK interest group or before when it was a user group. But yeah, really excited that it's out there, and hopefully people are using it. And if anyone's, I'll reiterate this at the end, but if anyone's got feedback, then please don't hesitate. Yeah, shout it to me. So. I'm going to start off with this slide that Phil showed in his Lingo presentation last time. I've stolen it just to highlight the QGIS plugin mentioning on this as a feature of Arches. So Arches has spatial data, GIS features and functionalities from within it. And I'm glad that both the QGIS plugin and the ArcGIS Pro plugin are now included on there. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we'll take a step back. I'm sure many people in this room know what a GIS is, but if you don't, that's fine. I thought let's find out what Esri's formal definition of what a GIS is. So it's a geographic information system, and essentially what it does is it allows you to connect data to a map. You can use it for data management, spatial analysis, using mapping and visualization. Um, but yes, essentially you can store spatial data with some metadata stored in an attribute table. And as this says, it helps users understand patterns, relationships, and geographical context. So GIS software, there are quite a few out there. Um, I was going to do a comparison here between QGIS and ArcGIS Pro, which I have done before. But there are many articles out there online with 50 or so comparisons, and I think that would probably give you a better example if you were interested in learning about the two of them. I also won't state my preference, but it is clear that I'm doing an entire presentation on QGIS, so that probably speaks for itself. But basically, these two software allow you to edit, analyze, visualize spatial data. You can create raster layers, so that could be images, satellite imagery, base maps, that sort of thing. You can use vectors, so your standard points, polygons, lines, multi-polygons, that sort of thing. And then also mesh layers if you're interested in maybe doing 3D mapping. Both support industry standard formats, things like shapefiles, geo packages, database connections, the whole lot, and web services. So WMS, WMTS, all of those uh, nice ones. But you might be thinking, well, hold on, that first slide said that Arches has GIS and spatial functionality, so why might we need a GIS? Well, Arches does contain GIS tooling and all the core functionality that you might need. And some organizations, this is fine. You don't need a GIS. You don't even need to worry about it because Arches contains everything that you need it to. That's visualizing the data. So we've got the Arches search map that loads when you want to do a search. You can view all of your polygons and all of your layers. So whether it's a monument layer here or application area or consultation, and then you can query that data, whether it's by doing just a map search, drawing a polygon of an area to see what returns. You can couple that with an advanced search in Arches, so you could get every church within this area. Or you could, if you were using Arches for HRs, perhaps you could use the BNG search, so you can enter a national grid reference, have a buffer around it, and then also couple that with your advanced query search. And then also you can have historical mapping within Arches. So you've got overlays. You can integrate something like PG feature serve, PG tile serve, or make your own Django views if you want for grabbing some Arches data, pulling it out into a new view, and maybe you've got specific types of churches or something. Or you can use a service such as GeoServer and actually have your own raster imagery on top of the base map. And then you can sort of search and visualize using that. So Arches isn't a GIS application. It's not intending to be, but it can integrate with GIS if need be, and it can hold its own. So why might one want to use a GIS? Well, there's probably a few reasons, and I've thought of three here, but there's probably millions. And it's really up to personal preference and sort of organization. Perhaps your legacy system used a GIS, or you've always used a GIS within the workflows that you have as an organization, and you want to retain that. So it could link into the second option. Maybe you've got the GIS, your QGIS instance is the source of truth for your spatial data. And perhaps it's not just you as maybe an HDR officer or whoever you might be using Arches. It's not just you interested in the GIS data. You've also got information coming from other, I don't know, planning bodies or other organizations, individuals um, within your organization supplying you with data. So it acts as a single playing ground for everyone. And also it kind of works offline. So Arch is obviously a web-based platform, but you could use a GIS out in the field or when you're away researching and then deal with uploading to Arches afterwards. That's also entirely possible. So some of you might know that there exists a plugin for Arches for Esri's ArcGIS Pro, and this really was the inspiration for the QGIS plugin. So it was developed by both Historic England and Farallon quite a few years ago now. But essentially what it allows users to do is use your ArcGIS Pro layers and your geometries and whatever you have there and push them up to Arches as either new resources or editing existing ones. And when this was released, and maybe even prior, there was quite a demand for a QGIS version of being able to integrate with Arches. And some might question why. Well, one thing I didn't mention that is the main difference between QGIS and ArcGIS Pro is their availability and sort of the licensing. Now, QGIS is open source, it's free. Both Arches and QGIS sort of share similar GPL licensing. ArcGIS Pro is a proprietary piece of software, it's closed source, and if you want to use it, you have to get a license for it. The other interesting thing about QGIS and Arches is both are written in Python. Now, while this actually doesn't really mean too much, it does lower the barrier to entry if maybe your Arches developers are interested in QGIS because the language barrier is non-existent. You can understand it and you can start, getting your hands dirty if you want. And both QGIS and Arches have community-driven development. So you can go to either and request a new feature or issue a bug report, that sort of thing. So like I said, the QGIS plugin was released on the 13th of January this year. It shares the same functionality as the Esri one, but for QGIS. Now, that's likely not always going to be the case, as I've got a roadmap at the very end to show you sort of what we've got planned for the future. But right now, both do the same bits of functionality in the sense that you can authenticate with Arches, you can create resources, edit resources, etc. And I'll show you that in a second. And just for developers who might be interested in a bit of the software side of it, I'll be very quick, don't worry. The source code is available on GitHub. It's under the Arches project organization. You can see it here. If you want, you can raise a pull request. You can go raise an issue. Like I said, it's written in Python. The front end of QGIS and the QGIS plugin is it is written in a framework called PyQt. That's a framework. The Qt framework is a framework for C++, but it's just a Python binding for it. And if you want to get involved in UI development, then there are instructions within the documentation, but you can use a program called Qt Creator, and you can essentially view the front end as sort of dialogues, boxes, widgets, that sort of thing. So, how to install the plugin and how to get started with it. So, there are some pre-requirements. First is that you need Arches running. It needs to be accessible via a public domain IP address. Not necessarily public, obviously, if you're on your own network, that's fine, but it needs to be accessible. Then you need to register what's called an OAuth application. OAuth is just the way that Arches can authenticate with external APIs and other software that might use the APIs. Once you've created an OAuth application, you then copy what's called a client ID into your settings.py file. That might sound confusing, but the Arches documentation is very good on this bit. So any confusion, hopefully the Arches documentation will sort you out there. And once you've registered the OAuth app, all you now need is a user, an Arches user, preferably with permissions, because the Arches QGIS plugin reflects the permissions that your Arches user has. So if maybe you're a volunteer who doesn't actually have access to create brand new resources, the plugin is not going to let you in. So you need to have the relevant permissions. And then optionally, if you are interested in editing existing resources rather than just pushing up new ones, you'll probably need an Arches resource layer. And this can be served by, again, PG feature serve, tile serve, any Postgres, or simply just the spatial views functionality that exists within core Arches. And that's what I will be using in today's sort of screenshots about how it can be used. So you've done your requirements, you've got Arches up and running. So how to actually install the plugin? The easiest way is to just do it from within QGIS. And it's simple, it's easy. You just need to go to the plugins bar at the very top, hit the manage and install plugins option, and this will open up your plugins dialog where you can see everything you've got installed and all plugins that exist in the world. So once you're there, you can search Arches or Arches project and you can see it pop up. It'll show you some information, the description, I'll show you the number of downloads and the ratings it's got, as well as the latest version, so you can make sure you're up to date. You can then hit install plugin, or if you've already installed it, you can uninstall it or reinstall it. And then once it's there, you can access it via the plugins drop down again. You'll see Arches project, and then you can either click that, or there's the Arches icon also on the toolbar, which you can just click to get started. The second option is downloading it from the online QGIS plugins repository. So every plugin that's made is uploaded to this plugins repo website, and the Arches project plugin is no different. So I've got the URL there, also the one for the Arches project, but you could also just search it. I'm sure it would come up via Google. And what you see here is essentially the same information. You can download latest, which will download as you would expect, the latest version, the latest stable, non-experimental version. And that'll download a zip, which you then need to find and drop into your QGIS installation path. This also shows some details about who created it, where the homepage is, the versions, that sort of thing. And you can also see version history. You can install previous versions. You can see the 3 experimental plugin versions that we released, if you were interested in looking at them. Also, for future versions, we may have a new experimental version before it becomes actually released. So if you were interested in being on sort of the cutting edge version rather than the LTS version, you could do that as well. And then once you click the version itself, again, you can download it here, and you can also see the change log. So for the release one, we've just done an overview of the core functionality. But if there's a patch release, this will include what it fixes, or if it's a minor release, it'll include the new features, maybe some breaking changes, that sort of thing. And you can see the QGIS version that it supports, whether it needs any external dependencies, that sort of thing. And finally, the third method is cloning from GitHub. This is primarily for developers. I wouldn't recommend anyone do this if they were interested in deploying the plugin for production. It's really for people who want to tinker around or maybe contribute to development. So as I mentioned, the GitHub page is on Arches project. You can see it here if you just want to have a look at the code, but it's linked to on the website as well. And yes, if you want to develop it, this is the way I would suggest. Now, installation can also be a bit tricky, especially the GitHub one. There are a few steps. I would suggest looking at the GitHub README. I've got a video later of just sort of scrolling through it, but we've been very thorough with this README because it's kind of the documentation at the moment, not just developer and installation docs, but also user docs. So I'd highly recommend that. So you've installed the plugin. Now what? Well, you can start playing with it. So if you hit the button, you'll see that it opens up the Arches project, the QGIS plugin dialog. This is what it looks like. You'll see that it's a separate interface to QGIS, so it's not attached to sort of the interface yet. And we've got the sign-in page that you're met with, along with five tab options. So I'll quickly go through those. But what I will show as well is that we have two themes active on the plugin. So you've got the Arches theme that is what it boots up with, and this is to mimic Arches in the sense that maybe if you're very, very familiar with Arches and then you go to the plugin, you feel at home. But also, if you are more familiar with QGIS and you open this up and you see Arches and then you become a bit confused, then this is the theme for you. So we've got the two side by side. We've got the sign-in interface. The next one is the create resources interface, where everything's inactive at the moment because we've not logged in, hence why the buttons and the drop downs are slightly gray. But this is where we can select our Arches resource and our geometry. So we want to push up to Arches for brand new resources. We've then got edit resourcing, or editing resources, sorry, where you register resources to edit, and then you can tinker around with them once you've registered them as an official Arches resource. We've got the activity log. This is a page where you can see every operation that's happened in the current QGIS session. And then lastly, we've got the settings, which is fairly bare bone at the moment. It's just the theme tick box, but I'm sure it'll grow as the project grows. So I've got a few screenshots here to sort of show how it might work in practice. For this sort of example, I've used Arches for HERs. I've used some Sheffield-based buildings and maybe some operations that one might do. So I'm logging in to my local instance. As you can see, it's just a Arches running on my laptop here. And you don't have to type in your server every single time. So it's nice. It remembers your server URL as well as your username. So you don't have to go type it in every single time. And once you've logged in, you're met with an Arches sort of loading wheel. It connects to your Arches, it fetches the graphs, it fetches permissions, and then you're in. You can see that this is sort of the user profile page where you've got a picture of a person with your name showing you which server you're connected to, and you've got refresh model. You've got a button for refreshing models and logging out. Refreshing models and nodes, that button just does what it says in the tin, really. If you're working on Arches at the same time as the GIS, and maybe you created a brand new model whilst logged in, your QGIS instance won't know about it. So pressing that button will just refresh everything that QGIS plugin knows about your Arches instance. And that's the same for if you've maybe edited a resource model, made a new node. So we go to create resource. In this example, want to create a new monument. So I'm going to hit the drop down and it'll see all of our resource models that have a GeoJSON feature collection node within them. So you'll see that person isn't within this list because same with organization, it doesn't have a geometry node. So we've selected monument, and here in my QGIS instance, I've drawn the Sheffield Millennium Gallery. This is definitely not the reason that it's the venue for our the Arches Developer Conference being hosted in Sheffield later this year. Yes, definitely not intentional. But yeah, I've drawn the Millennium Gallery because I want to send this up to my local Arches instance. So I select it through QGIS, and the plugin now knows that one feature has been selected. This has been selected. So all I need to do is hit create resource, and a pop-up will pop up telling me, are you sure you want to create this? You can cancel or you can create. It'll tell you that you've selected one polygon. And if you hit create, it'll tell you a nice success message and it'll give you the URL, which you then can click and it'll take you to Arches. And what you can see is just a blank resource loaded with that geometry that you've just pushed to Arches. It's got no name, so you can just go and create it. You can start adding descriptions, designations, construction phases, the whole lot. So the next thing I want to do is I want to edit an existing resource. So we have on this instance Sheffield Cathedral. Now, this resource exists in my Arches instance. You can see it here, and you can see in the bottom right that that's what Sheffield Cathedral actually looks like. But this resource maybe was created a while ago, or maybe just incomplete, because there's a bit at the back of the Sheffield Cathedral that was built in, I think, the 80s, called the Archer project. And this is missing from our resource in the geometry. So I want to add this and push it up to Arches through the QGIS plugin and through QGIS. So I've selected my Sheffield Cathedral model, Sheffield Cathedral geometry. I'm registering it as a new resource. It's been recognized. The plugin shows us a table of information that's provided in the layer. So in the spatial view, it's showing me the functional type, the description, period, any designation information. And this shows that it has recognized it as an Arches resource because it's got the Arches resource instance ID, it's got tile ID, it's got nodes, etc. So I then want to select my geometry to upload to Arches. So I've activated my Sheffield polygons layer on the left, and I've selected the additional bit to the cathedral. It's noticed it, it said one feature is selected, and now I hit the add geometry button, which questions me again, am I sure I want to add it? I say yes, and it gives me a nice, well done, you've successfully done this operation. And we go to the Arches resource, and we can see it's there. So I can now continue editing, and then this polygon will show in my QGIS instance. And lastly, the final operation that I want to do before I'm finished with the day is I want to fix this, frankly, badly drawn geometry of the Sheffield City Hall. So in my Sheffield polygons layer, I've drawn it much nicer, and I've registered the old or the existing Arches geometry as a resource. Again, it's registered, it knows it's an Arches resource. I've now selected my new geometry, and instead of adding, I want to replace. So I go and say, yes, I want to replace, click replace. It's identified that there's only one polygon that's been selected, and it tells me it was a success. And now I go back to Arches, and we can see that my old badly drawn geometry is now gone, and the nice new one is in its place. And now just before logging out and being done with the day, I want to have a look at the activity log just to be sure that I've definitely done what I was meant to. And we can see with timestamps that yes, I created a resource, I appended, and I replaced geometries. And with that, I can log out, I can be done, I can close the plugin. And yeah. So that's currently the functionality. There are a few things I didn't go into. Sort of it recognizes whether your model's got multiple geometry nodes. So if that is something that you've modeled, you can upload to one or the other, along with some other things. So we've got the Arches roadmap, which is also a GitHub repository, primarily for developers, but anyone can see it. And yeah, we've got up to version 3 planned, really, and this is probably going to grow as well. We had a few things that we really wanted to get into the 1.0 release. We just had to tell ourselves, no, that has to wait for 1.1. Things like, instead of telling you one polygon to be sent to Arches, it's going to instead show you a nice image of what you've selected so you can visually see that it's correct, rather than push it to Arches and realize you've made a mistake. Other things like integrating with Q settings a bit more. So if you want the default style sheet to be the QGIS one, then you can set that, and you don't ever have to continue. Well, you don't have to continuously be disabling it every time you open QGIS. Then version 2, the main one, well, the main two we've got there are supporting single sign-on with Arches. So currently you have to log in with your URL, username, and password in one go, which means that if you use SSO for Arches and maybe use Active Directory or something to manage logins, unfortunately, the QGIS plugin won't work for you at the moment. Secondly, instead of having a separate interface that opens over the top of QGIS, we're going to have the interface docked to the QGIS panel, so you can drag it around. You can have it as an independent interface if you want, but you can also just attach it to the side so that it never goes away. And then finally, version 3 is to support QGIS 4 and the upgrade of PyQt from 5 to 6. And again, that's the UI framework. And then, as I mentioned, this is our README on GitHub and kind of the user documentation. And it's very thorough. We go into quite a lot of detail, things that I've spoken about today, but also if you want to revisit them and you want to read about them, then you can do here. It's got information for users, it's got information for developers. I would highly recommend it. And again, if you're still having issues, don't hesitate. Ask me via Slack or mention it on the forum or in the GitHub repository. Anyway, is a good way. And yes, that's it. So that was the QGIS plugin. Thank you everyone for listening. If you've got questions, feel free. Yeah, thank you.